You ever wonder why your company can afford to give executives million-dollar bonuses but can't give you a cost of living raise? Why they'll spend a fortune on stock buybacks but tell you there's no budget for better healthcare? Why they'll lay off hundreds of workers who actually make the products and provide the services, but keep every single person in the C-suite? It's not an accident. It's not just greed. Well, it is greed, but it's legal greed. It's actually built into the system. And there's a specific moment in history where corporations legally stopped giving a damn about you and started worshiping at the altar of shareholder value. Let me explain how we got here and why you're screwed by design. So let's rewind to the mid-20th century. I'm talking post-World War II through the 1970s. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't a workers' paradise. There were still plenty of problems, plenty of exploitation. But there was at least this idea, this social contract that corporations had multiple stakeholders. What does that mean? It means companies believed, or at least pretended to believe, that they had responsibilities to different groups. Shareholders, yes, but also employees, customers, and the communities they operated in. CEOs would actually say things like, "We have a duty to provide good jobs and fair wages." General Electric's CEO in the 1950s literally said the corporation's purpose was to serve the balanced interest of shareholders, employees, customers, and the public. Can you imagine a CEO saying that today without their board immediately firing them? Back then, corporations were seen as these institutions that existed within society and had obligations to society. Crazy concept, right? Worker productivity was rising, and guess what? Wages rose with it. From 1948 to 1973, productivity went up 96.7%, and hourly compensation went up 91.3%. They were basically moving together. When companies made more money because workers produced more value, workers actually saw that money. Revolutionary idea! CEOs made good money, sure, but we're talking 20-to-1 ratio compared to average workers. 20-to-1. Remember that number. Then something happened in the 1970s. The economy hit some rough patches. Inflation, oil crisis, increased competition from Japan and Germany. Corporate profits weren't growing as fast as they had been, and shareholders started getting nervous. And this is when a guy named Milton Friedman entered the chat. In 1970, he published an essay in the New York Times Magazine called "The Social Responsibility of Business is to Increase Its Profits." Catchy title, right? Friedman's argument was simple and seductive. A corporation's only responsibility is to its shareholders. Not to workers, not to communities, not to society. Just to the people who own stock. Anything else, he argued, was basically theft from shareholders. Now, here's the thing. This wasn't just an academic theory. This became doctrine. This became the way business schools taught MBAs. This became the religion of Wall Street. And most importantly, this became enshrined in corporate law and governance. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, this idea of shareholder primacy became gospel. Corporations restructured around it. Boards of directors internalized it. And here's where it gets legally sticky. Corporate law evolved to basically require prioritizing shareholder value. Now, technically, there's no law that explicitly says, screw your workers to enrich shareholders. But here's how it works in practice. Board members have what's called a fiduciary duty to shareholders. Courts have interpreted this to mean that boards must prioritize shareholder interest above all else, especially in certain situations like mergers or takeovers. So, if you're a CEO and you say, "Hey, I want to pay workers more and accept lower profits," shareholders can literally sue you. They can claim you're breaching your fiduciary duty. They can vote you out. They can tank your stock price. The system is designed to punish anyone who prioritizes human beings over quarterly earnings. Okay, so how does this actually play out? How does shareholder primacy translate into getting screwed? Stock-based compensation for executives. This is genius, really, in an evil way. Starting in the 80s and exploding in the 90s, executive pay shifted from mostly salary to mostly stock options and stock grants. You know what that means? It means executives get rich when the stock price goes up. And you know what makes stock prices go up in the short term? Cutting costs. And you know what the biggest cost for most companies is? Labor. You. Your salary, your benefits, your pension. So executives are literally financially incentivized to pay you less, work you harder, and eliminate your job if possible. When they lay off 10,000 workers, the stock price jumps. Their personal net worth increases by millions, and they get bonuses for tough decision-making and driving efficiency. Meanwhile, those 10,000 workers, they're struggling to pay rent. But hey, shareholder value increased. Mission accomplished. Stock buybacks. Oh man, this is where it gets really disgusting. So companies used to take their profits and reinvest in the business. New equipment, research and development, employee training, wage increases, things that create long-term value. But now, they take those profits and buy back their own stock. This artificially inflates the stock price because there are fewer shares available. Existing shareholders get richer. Executives holding stock options get richer. And you get nothing. Actually, worse than nothing because that money could have gone to raises or better benefits or job security. But instead, it went to financial engineering and possibly laying you off. Want to know how much corporations spent on stock buybacks in recent years? Trillions with a T. Just handing money back to shareholders instead of investing in the people who actually create value. Quarterly earnings obsession. Because shareholder primacy dominates, companies are obsessed with quarterly earnings reports. Every 3 months, they have to show Wall Street that profits are up, revenue's up, margins are improving. This creates insane short-term thinking. Long-term investments in workers? That hurts quarterly numbers. Training programs? Cost money. Raising wages? Reduces profit margins. Better working conditions? Too expensive. So none of that happens because it would upset shareholders this quarter. But layoffs? Closing a factory? Cutting healthcare benefits? Those all boost the next earnings call. So that's what they do. Let's talk about what this actually means for real people. Because we're not talking about abstract economic theory here. We're talking about millions of lives, real human people. Remember that productivity wage link I mentioned earlier? From 1948 to 1973, productivity and wages rose together. But from 1973 to now, productivity has increased 77.5%. However, hourly compensation has increased only 18.1%. Do the math. Workers are producing vastly more value, generating vastly more profit for companies, and they're seeing almost none of it. Where's that money going? You know exactly where it's going. Shareholders, stock buybacks, executive compensation. That CEO pay ratio I mentioned, 20-1 in the 1970s, it's now 350-1. Some companies, it's over 1,000-1. CEOs are making in a day what their average worker makes in a year. And it's all legal. It's celebrated. It's all considered good business. Meanwhile, you can't afford healthcare. You can't afford childcare. You can't afford housing. You're one medical emergency away from bankruptcy. You're working 2 jobs and still can't save money. And you're told it's your fault for not working hard enough or not being skilled enough. But here's the reality. You are working hard enough. You're probably working harder than any generation before you. The system is just rigged to extract value from your labor and funnel it upward to people who contribute nothing. Think about it. Who actually creates value in a company? Is it the shareholders sitting at home watching their portfolio? Or is it the workers designing products, manufacturing goods, serving customers, writing code, doing the actual work? Shareholders provide capital, sure, but capital's worthless without labor to put it to use. You can have $1 billion, but if nobody actually builds anything or does anything with it, it's just numbers on a screen. Yet our entire economic and legal system is set up to treat shareholders, people who often do literally nothing but own stock, as the most important stakeholders. More important than the people breaking their backs, sacrificing their health, spending the majority of their waking hours creating actual value. Now here's what they'll tell you to justify this system. Shareholders take on risk. They deserve the rewards. Okay, but workers take on risk too. You risk your health, your time, your financial security by depending on a job that could disappear tomorrow. And unlike shareholders, who can diversify their portfolio, you can't diversify your need to eat and pay rent. You're all in on your job. If we pay workers more, prices will go up, and we won't be competitive. Really? Because CEO pay has skyrocketed, and somehow that doesn't make companies uncompetitive. Somehow there's always money for executive bonuses and stock buybacks, but never for worker wages. Interesting how that works. The stock market benefits everyone through pension funds and 401ks. First of all, fewer and fewer people even have pensions anymore, because companies eliminated them to cut costs. Second, yeah, some people have 401ks, but the bottom 50% of Americans own basically zero stocks. The top 10% own 89% of all stocks. So when we prioritize shareholder value, we're prioritizing the wealth of people who are already wealthy. Workers are free to negotiate for better wages. With what leverage? When labor unions have been systematically destroyed? When companies collude to keep wages low? When there's always someone more desperate willing to work for less? When the alternative to accepting a bad job is homelessness? That's not negotiation, that's coercion. Here's the thing that keeps me up at night. This system is working exactly as it's designed. It's not broken. It's not a series of unfortunate accidents. It's a deliberate structure built to transfer wealth from workers to owners, from labor to capital, from the many to the few. And it's all legal. It's all considered normal. It's taught in every business school as the correct way to run a company. Maximize shareholder value. That's the prime directive. Everything else is secondary. Your dignity? Secondary. Your health? Secondary. Your ability to afford a decent life? Secondary. Your time with your family? Secondary. Your mental well-being? Secondary. The only thing that matters is whether the line goes up on the stock chart. And the beautiful evil of it is they've convinced so many people that this is just how economics works. Like it's a law of nature. They've made it seem inevitable, unchangeable, just the way things have to be. But it's not. It's a choice. It's a series of choices made by people in power to structure the economy this way. Different choices could be made. The law could change. Corporate governance could change. Tax policy could change. We could decide that corporations have obligations beyond shareholder returns, but that would require admitting that the current system is fundamentally unjust. It would require people in power to give up some of that power. It would require shareholders to accept that maybe, just maybe, they don't deserve to extract every possible penny from the people who actually do the work. So what do we do with this information? I don't have all the answers. I'm not running for office, I'm not organizing a revolution, I'm just trying to make sense of why life feels so impossible when we're told the economy is doing great. But I think the first step is just knowing. Understanding that when your company chooses profits over people, they're not being unusually cruel. They're following the playbook. They're doing what the system legally requires and financially rewards. When you can't get a raise but the company reports record profits, it's not a coincidence. When they lay you off but executive bonuses increase, it's not an accident. When they cut your benefits but announce a new stock buyback program, it's not a mystery. It's shareholder primacy. It's the logical outcome of a system that treats workers as costs to be minimized and shareholders as the only stakeholders that matter. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every corporate decision starts to make sense. Not morally, not ethically, but logically within this broken framework. You're not failing. You're not lazy. You're not inadequate. You're just living under an economic system designed to extract maximum value from your labor while giving you the minimum possible in return. And maybe, if enough people understand that, we can start having serious conversations about changing it. If you've seen this play out at your own job, share your story. If you're as angry about this as I am, let me know I'm not alone. Because they've got all the money and all the power, but there's a lot more of us than there are of them. And the only way this changes is if we stop accepting it as normal. Welcome to shareholder capitalism. It's legal, it's celebrated, and it's destroying millions of lives in the name of line go up. Thanks for listening. Now go demand better. You deserve it.